Welcome back to Atom Nation HQ. Today's explainer, well, let's just say it's a heavy one. If you follow the intelligence world, you definitely saw that massive April 2026 document drop from The Intercept.
Oh man, Alex, my phone was absolutely blowing up. When I saw those newly declassified CIA files on Project Bluebird and MKUltra hit the public domain, it was just pure raw disbelief, like a literal, did you see this text to everyone I know. We've heard the rumors for decades, but seeing the actual paper trail hit the public domain gives you that chilling, sink-in-your-seat feeling.
Right. But we have to cut through the speculation. My goal today is to show you exactly what the government's own ink proves they were doing in the shadows. No rumors, just the documents. And we have to start with this quote because it sets the whole terrifying tone. Pulled straight from a 1950 CIA memo. Can we guarantee total amnesia under any and all conditions?
Yeah, and that wasn't some late-night philosophical debate. That was an operational objective. They were literally writing memos asking if they could seize a subject, make them commit an extreme act of sabotage, like crashing a plane or wrecking a train, and then wipe their memory completely clean.
Which leads us to the crucial question. How far did the CIA actually go to find out if this was possible?
A lot further than most people want to admit.
Maybe, but Jordan, it is so easy to get lost in the science fiction of it all. So we are going to firmly ground our debate today. We are going to demand that we look exclusively at what the surviving paper trail actually proves the government did to human subjects. So here is our roadmap to untangle this dense history. We'll start with the brainwashing myth, then look at the newly revealed testing on Korean POWs, the staggering scope of MKUltra, the exact methods used, the 1973 cover-up, and finally, what the surviving paper trail actually tells us. Part 1. The brainwashing myth.
Let's set the stage. The original pretext for all these extreme programs was Cold War terror. American soldiers were coming home from the Korean War making statements that sounded exactly like communist propaganda. The public was absolutely terrified that our troops were being literally brainwashed by advanced esoteric techniques.
But here is the stark contrast. While the public panicked that Soviet and Korean forces had cracked the code of the human mind, the CIA reality was entirely different. Sidney Gottlieb, the CIA chemist who ran MKUltra, admitted in a 1983 deposition that the agency investigated and found absolutely zero evidence that the communists were using esoteric mind control.
Right, they knew it was mostly just harsh physical conditions and conventional interrogation.
Exactly, but they proceeded to fund their own aggressive mind control research anyway. They literally used the public's fear as a blank check. Which brings us to part 2. Testing on Korean POWs, specifically the October 1950 experiments. This is arguably the biggest bombshell from the 2026 declassified files. This is where the paper trail gets profoundly dark. The documents confirm that in October 1950, the CIA used 25 North Korean prisoners of war as human guinea pigs for Project Bluebird. They sent a team to Japan and Korea administering combinations of heavy sedatives like sodium amidol right alongside extreme stimulants to these prisoners. And the documented stated goal of this exercise? To control an individual to the point where they will do our bidding against their will and even against fundamental laws of nature, like self-preservation. Moving to part 3, the scope of MKUltra. Because what started with 25 POWs overseas absolutely didn't stay overseas. It quickly spiraled into a sprawling domestic intelligence apparatus. Let's walk through the timeline. In 1950, it starts as Project Bluebird. By 1951, it expands into Project Artichoke. In 1953, CIA Director Allen Dulles officially authorizes MKUltra, absorbing all of this under Sidney Gottlieb's control. It runs unchecked until 1973 when Richard Helms orders all the files destroyed. But then, by a sheer stroke of luck, 20,000 financial files were misfiled. They were discovered in 1977, which blew the lid off the whole thing. And this brilliantly illustrates a deeply unsettling historical parallel. You might think MKUltra was just an isolated Cold War aberration. It wasn't. Look at the 1963 QBARC interrogation manual. It directly cited MKUltra techniques. As researchers point out, this exact manual laid the psychological groundwork for how the CIA operated detention centers in Vietnam, Latin American dictatorships, and straight through to 21st century black sites and Guantanamo Bay. The pattern of secretly experimenting to gain control of the human mind didn't just vanish. It became standard operating procedure.
Now wait, Jordan, that is a completely different context. You're bridging decades of entirely different geopolitical conflicts.
Let's stick to the program itself. We are talking about a program with a known budget of at least $25 million. Now look, the Senate Church Committee held hearings on this. They exposed it. The system worked. I argue that MKUltra was a rogue, overfunded program that Congress successfully shut down.
Shut down? Alex, are you kidding me? A rogue program?
Look at the actual footprint. We are talking about 80 different civilian institutions, universities, hospitals, pharmaceutical companies, 149 separate subprojects. They were running clandestine safe houses in New York and San Francisco, dosing unwitting U.S. and Canadian citizens with LSD to see what would happen. A program this vast, embedded this deeply into civilian infrastructure, wasn't just a rogue offshoot. It was a systemic feature of power, operating with zero accountability. Okay. Part 4. Methods of mind control. Let's pull this back from the edge and look strictly at the verified, documented tactics. No speculation. The CIA explored every avenue to break the human mind. Step 1 was often covert LSD dosing, sometimes keeping people high for weeks. Step 2 involved severe sensory deprivation. Step 3 was massive regimens of electroshock therapy. And Step 4, spearheaded by researchers like Dr. Ewan Cameron at McGill University, was psychic driving. They would force a drugged, paralyzed patient to listen to a looped audio message hundreds of thousands of times to literally de-pattern their brain and overwrite their personality. And to truly understand this, Alex, you have to look at the human devastation. This is a snippet from the deposition of Val Orlikoff. Her husband was a member of Canadian Parliament. She went to the Allen Memorial Institute for postpartum depression. Instead, she became an unwitting CIA guinea pig. She describes being injected with LSD, her bones feeling like they were melting, subjected to sleep therapy for up to 60 days. This was state-sponsored psychological torture disguised as medical treatment. Which leads us to Part 5, the 1973 cover-up.
Right, and this is where we genuinely clash. Because my question is, did the program truly end? Or are we just debating the ash pile of what Richard Helms ordered destroyed?
Look at this surviving document. It explicitly notes that Helms and Gottlieb set out to destroy all records, but they overlooked a few financial documents showing at least $60,000 spent specifically on brainwashing experiments. Because of these surviving receipts and the 20,000 files we did find, I argue we have a complete enough picture to know the abuses were stopped. We are debating the ash pile, Alex, not the fire. Look at the permanent mental damage inflicted on plaintiffs like Dr. Morrow, who said the experiments literally killed her life. These documents show us the horrific collateral damage. But what if they only show us the failures? What if the real successes were the files that actually made it into the incinerator? Okay, let's get to Part 6 then, the surviving paper trail.
Yeah, before we get to our final unanswered question, there's something I need to show you first. Because once you see this connection, the rest of it hits completely differently. There is a specific documented fact that just surfaced which completely shatters the CIA's official defense that MKUltra was just an expensive failure.
Notice this excerpt from a 1955 report by top MKUltra researcher Dr. Jolly West, sent directly to Sidney Gottlieb. West explicitly states he had developed the technology to remove true memories and replace them with false memories without their knowledge. When the CIA was investigated by Congress in the 70s, they removed this claim from the report before handing it over. They successfully hid the fact that they had actually achieved one of their most terrifying goals. Which brings us to the absolute most uncomfortable realization of this entire explainer. Everything we just covered about what they were trying to do to the human mind in 1950, they are still asking the exact same questions today. The only difference is the technology. In the 1950s, they had to rely on crude syringes, LSD, and electroshock machines. Today, in 2026, we live in a world of AI-generated deepfakes, algorithmic behavioral modification, and neural implants. They don't need the syringes anymore to alter human perception.
Wow. Okay, that actually frames it in a completely different light.
And that brings us to the single biggest unresolved thread in the entire MKUltra archive. Subproject 54, codenamed Perfect Concussion.
This is the one that keeps me up at night. A Navy program designed to use invisible subaural frequency blast to completely erase human memory.
The records hint at its existence. The paper trail introduces the testing, but the results are entirely missing. It's a precise, documented loose end that just goes dead silent. So we are leaving you with this final thought. If they were willing to drug POWs, torture unwitting civilians in hospitals, and lie to Congress about successfully replacing human memories, what happened to the secrets they didn't burn?
The pursuit of total control over the mind never actually stopped. It just evolved. And the only thing standing between that pursuit and us is a paper trail they accidentally failed to destroy. Thanks for joining us for this explainer. Keep your eyes open and keep asking questions.